Hello and welcome to this episode of Peake Life. Today we're talking special policy areas, and to talk about that I've got Mark Woodward with us. He is the Comprehensive Plan Administrator with the Planning Department. Mark, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
So this is actually a really neat thing that the Planning Department does. It's all kind of under the umbrella of the comprehensive plan, if I understand that correctly. Can you give us a quick rundown of what the comprehensive plan is?
So absolutely, the comprehensive plan is a document that is a future blueprint for how the city is going to grow and develop. It's something that's adopted by City Council, and we review it every 5 years. Actually, we tend to have one or two amendments of the comprehensive plan about every year, but we are required by law to review it every 5 years. It is a requirement for all Virginia localities to have a comprehensive plan, and they're intended to be very broad and generic to cover a variety of land use, growth management, historic preservation, infrastructure, and those type of planning for the future. So it really captures a lot of the elements of Chesapeake.
Now, you mentioned that it is kind of broad on purpose, so it is different from, say, zoning.
That's right, that's right. The zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance are very specific and have very specific development standards and criteria. The comprehensive plan, because it encompasses the entire city and all of the different unique geographic and lifestyle arrangements that we have, it tends to be much more broad. Mm-hmm. But it does have policy language in it that enables us to support or deny, if necessary, specific land use proposals that are not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And so because it's so broad, we have developed over the years a series of special policy areas. Because Chesapeake is so diverse and unique, from urban to suburban to rural, as well as unique villages throughout the city, Deep Creek, Western Branch, Indian River, Great Bridge, we have developed special policy areas over the years to be a bit more specific in terms of what we would like to see happen or what City Council would like to see happen in the future.
Sure. Yeah, so Chesapeake itself is such a large city. It's honestly comparable to counties in other areas, just with the size, the population. So these special policy areas, there's a lot of different types, but they really allow you to kind of hone in on certain areas of the city and what those areas and people need the most?
That's right, that's right. So for example, we have recently, just last year, City Council adopted the Great Bridge Historic Gateway Overlay District, which is actually followed an earlier special policy that was developed, the Great Bridge Village Design Guidelines in 2008. So to tell you the distinction between the zoning ordinance and just a policy. So the policy was a guidance document. It didn't really have the full effect of an ordinance or a law. It was a guiding document for City Council, Planning Commission, the departments that are responsible for development review. But most of it was voluntary. There were a couple of incentives in it, but most of it was voluntary. So last year, City Council determined that it would be better to have more enforcement teeth to it to ensure good consistency in the Great Bridge Village area. So we created this special overlay district under the zoning ordinance to put together those specific development criteria and standards that I mentioned earlier, which are enforceable under the development review process. So that's kind of the distinction between policies in the comprehensive plan and more enforceable zoning ordinance provisions and subdivision ordinance provisions.
So not all policy areas are necessarily part of the zoning ordinance?
That's right, that's right.
Okay.
We have, for example, we have the South Military Highway Corridor study from 2005, which I was actually the project manager for that. There is no zoning overlay district associated with that, so all of the land uses or future land uses would follow the guidance in the comprehensive plan, but also the requirements of the zoning ordinance on a parcel by parcel basis versus an overlay district. We also have other special policy areas more related to economic development. We have the South Norfolk Business Overlay District, which essentially follows the Poindexter Street corridor a portion of Liberty Street, and a little bit of Bainbridge Boulevard. And that is intended to ensure that we get good quality business development and commercial development in that corridor. Another one would be the Transportation Corridor Overlay District, which was adopted by City Council in 2000. Again, that guides future land uses in the Route 168 Expressway and the Dominion Boulevard corridors themselves.
It sounds like there really is a science to this project. You know, this, you mentioned the studies. So what's the process of this? Does it always start with a study and, you know, community feedback? How do you even get into creating new special policy areas?
That's a great question. So in our comprehensive plan, we typically identify areas that merit future study and development of future plans for those areas. So for example, the Indian River Planning Area study that's underway as we speak, it's scheduled to be considered by Planning Commission and City Council over the next few months for final adoption. That was actually a study that was recommended in the 2035 Comprehensive Plan, and we eventually were fortunate to have funding from City Council to be able to undertake that study. So we launched it a couple of years ago. And we have another one that is going to be getting started fairly soon, the Industrial Waterfront Study, which has actually been something we've wanted to do since the 2026 Comprehensive Plan in 2005. It's our industrial waterfront in the South Norfolk area really needs to be evaluated for highest and best use to promote better economic development, but also for resiliency purposes. Because it is, you know, waterfront property. Other times, we will get requests from City Council to study certain areas for creating special policies for those. But however it begins, we do typically develop a plan for the study, including if we're going to be using consulting services to identify funding for that, and to develop the scope of work for the contract for that project. But usually one of the very first things that we do once the project has been identified, funded, and is underway, we do an initial round of community input meetings, kind of a community needs assessment, identifying from the public and the stakeholders what they see as the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, or typical SWOT analysis. We do that in the community through community input meetings, surveys, focus meetings with key stakeholders, that type of thing. And from that, then we start to formulate the true game plan for the study, what we should be focusing on, what we should be emphasizing, and potentially what some of the outcomes should be for the study that we will recommend to Planning Commission and City Council.
And so once that policy area is in place, it's approved, it's good to go, everything that happens in that area is ideally reflective of that policy, but not necessarily has to. Is that right? Like that kind of helps guide the decision makers?
Yes.
As to, you know, the yay or nay for development and that kind of thing?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So primarily through the development review process, rezoning applications, conditional use permit applications, one of the first things that we'll do as the review team is look to see which special policy area this particular project may fall in. It could be the Great Bridge Village, South Military Highway, the South Norfolk Historic District. We look to see where this project is located and which special policy may apply to it, including even beyond the special policy areas, the comprehensive plan as a whole, including our 2035 land use plan, the master transportation plan. Those are actually policies themselves. A lot of people think of them as just maps, basically, but they're actually policies. And so, yes, we look at all that and apply that to the merits of the application to determine if it's consistent with our comprehensive plan. We also use the special policy areas for helping to identify projects that should be prioritized in the city's capital improvement plan.
Oh, yeah.
And that's actually our current city manager, Christopher Price. That's a big emphasis for him is linking the capital improvement plan with the comprehensive plan and its special emphasis areas.
So making sure that that money is going in the direction that everybody wants us to go.
That's right.
Going down that path.
Particularly to take advantage and leverage what we call those catalyst projects. It could be an infrastructure project, or it could be a shell building for industrial purposes. Whatever that catalyst project is, to try to get funding for that to sort of jumpstart the revitalization or the intended outcome for that special policy area.
See, planning is so cool like that because, you have a planner brain. So I feel like you must just go into areas of the city. You can look at something and think, wow, it's XYZ right now, but man, in the future, it's going to be big. And I think it's easy to get caught up in all the terminology and the maps but this is really cool. This is essentially planning for Chesapeake's future and how we can make it as great as it can possibly be.
It really is. I'm a native of Chesapeake, if you will. I came here very young, 1966 actually, and I've grown up and gone through the schools and live in Chesapeake. And so for me, it's really very personally rewarding to be able to see the progress and to see a vision achieved, even if only incrementally over time. Just to see that future vision start to take shape and become a reality, and preserving historic sites, for example, or preserving open space and agricultural lands for future generations to be able to enjoy. It is very satisfying.
And really everything kind of starts and ends with community input. So we want the public to be alert to what this is and paying attention to how it kind of goes. So we will direct people to your website, and we'll certainly keep telling them about, we were recently sharing all the Indian River information with them, and as new studies and policy areas come out, we'll be sure to loop people in so we can get some feedback.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's always a big emphasis for us with any of the special policy area corridor studies or small area plans that we undertake. We always start with our plan for the most thorough community input that we can get. So we make that pledge to the public, absolutely.
Great. Mark Woodward with the Planning Department. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, that does it for this episode of Peake Life. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.